Takes them both about the same amount of time, maybe. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Gospel Truth. And again, so my computer over here catches up. Welcome to the Gospel Truth. Whether you are on Facebook at John Watson, we're doing this live, obviously, or if you're on Restoration Movement 2.0, we're awful glad that you are with us tonight. And we're going to be asking some serious questions of y'all. And I don't want anyone complaining about the wrinkles in my sheet. Okay, I'm just saying, when you take that thing down, you fold it up, it's going to get wrinkled. So unless I leave it up all the time, and I don't have the room to do that. So anyway, we're glad that you are with us tonight, and we're very thankful that you are going to be opening your Bible and studying along. That's certainly what we encourage. If you're ever in the Indianapolis area, we would love to have you come and visit with us at the West Side Church of Christ. Our address is 2675 Kentucky Avenue. It's Indianapolis, Indiana, 46221. So that gives you the proper GPS address so that you can find us and come meet with us and study with us. We'd certainly love to have you. Okay, and okay, you got to go pay attention here. People have been missing you. Hello, Brother Trent. He meant to do it all in caps, he said. So yeah. Hi, so yeah, it's good to see everybody. So I want to give a few shout outs here to Brother Roy Runyon, as he is referred to, the Venerable Roy Runyon.
The professor.
The professor. That's pretty good. I can live with that. And I'm sure he can too. So we've got Dusty Rose with us. Hello. It's good to see you with us here tonight. And we see James Barcelona, Tim Ogles. Very glad to see our good brother Tim Ogles worships with us at the West Side Church of Christ. We see Rick Brown and Jimmy Morgan and James Dunnigan. Awful glad to have you with us tonight. Good friend Michael Adams, right there. I see you there, my friend and my brother. Good to see you. Rhonda Powell, John Bob Wilson, and Randy Bryant. And I'm sure others will join with us. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. Now, I'm just warning you, it's about impossible to keep up with the, I think you need to scoot this. I need to scoot over and you need to scoot over a little bit. We'll get it squared away. Anyway, it's about impossible to keep up with the comments and so forth on there, but we will try. If you ask a question, we will try to answer that. And maybe if I can get to it after the show, we'll do that too. So I do try to do that, although it's pretty difficult. Although I'm hoping it'll get easier for me to have more time to do this here pretty soon. Okay, so there you noticed in our title that it says, "Why do you ignore the truth?" So here's the truth that we're asking about. Why do you ignore this? The truth is, Jesus has already returned. There you go. We just blurted it right out there, right, Chucky? Representing the Morgan clan. I see you there. Good to have you. So what's up with that? Jesus said it, and that's just all there is to it. So how do you get around that? What do you think, Trent? How do you get around the fact that Jesus told the people living in the first century that he would return in their lifetime?
Well, you don't read it, you don't hear it, you don't know it. So until you hear it and read it and see it for yourself, you're not going to believe it. If you rely on your minister or your elder who are not being honest in their feeding the flock, then you're never going to hear it unless you do your own studying.
Okay, amen. You got to do your own studying. So here, let's ask this question again. Why do you ignore the simple truth? Okay, so Trent answered. He gives a good answer. So why do you ignore the simple fact that Jesus said he would return, his second coming would take place before everybody from that generation died? Why do you ignore that fact? It is so blatant. So there you go. So maybe there are some here who are going to say the Sergeant Schultz effect. I see nothing, something like that. Nothing. Something like that. Is that? I think that's what you might be talking about. Yeah, that's pretty good, Roy. Actually, it's been a long time since I thought about what was that Hogan's Heroes? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at a passage or two. And there's a local preacher here who now just forget that. Forget that for now. It'll come back up. But so many local preachers here chastise us for asking them to explain Matthew 16 verses 26 and 27. So here it is. The Son of Man is going to come. I'm reading the New American Standard. He's going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels and will then repay every man according to his deeds. And truly I say to you, there's some of those who are standing here who will not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So from an audience relevance standpoint, so what is audience relevance? So what we have to understand is Jesus was speaking to, and the New Testament writers were writing to, a certain group of people. Here's a clue. It is not you. It's not me. Were they writing this for us? Well, obviously, yes, but they were not writing this to us. The things that we learn from the scriptures based on letters that were written to people 2,000 years ago. And from the New Testament and the Old Testament, it goes back another 1,500 years plus. Now, were those things written to us? If that's the case, Trent, have you started your ark yet?
No.
First off, you're going to have to find some gopher wood.
Mm-hmm.
But most people say, well, that's, God didn't really mean that. Okay, if he didn't mean that for us, then why are the other things for us? The simple fact is, Jesus said, and I agree with you, Rick Brown, some of you will not taste death until all these things have been fulfilled. I mean, if you put 2 or 3 passages together, not taking them out of context, that's exactly what Jesus said. Exactly what Jesus said. Hi, Marjorie. Doing good. I hope you are too. I hope all things are going well with you. We have to consider, if you're a Christian and you do not consider what the Bible says and you just leave it at that, then I have to ask you this question. Why do you ignore the truth? I mean, what's the purpose of your Christianity if you can't look at the Bible and say, okay, Jesus said this, why would you not do it? Trent, when I was preaching futurism is the doctrine that teaches that it's the same doctrine that the Jews started in the first century after the destruction of Jerusalem, after all of the evident signs had taken place that the Messiah had come. They were teaching that the Messiah would come in the future. Now, people today are teaching the exact same thing. They say Messiah is coming in the future. I mean, they just put a little twist on it. They Christianize it, but it's the same Jewish theology. The Messiah is coming in the future.
20 years ago, the ministers in the Church of Christ in this local area, and possibly other areas, I can't remember if at that time I had traveled outside of the state or outside of the area to listen to ministers, but I remember being taught and told and seeing and hearing people on the radio who did local radio programs here in Indianapolis. They would say that when the Lord comes back, he's going to come on the clouds with his angel to gather his elect.
Yes, sir.
The resurrection would take place. That's part of his gathering his elect. If people would come out of the graves in a physical body, change in air while they're being taken to heaven, and then God would reward us our due. Okay, whether you found yourself going into an eternal hell or you were going to go into an eternal heaven. They hardly ever spoke about 2 Peter 3, never mentioned anything about a new heaven and a new earth. It was always, the Lord is coming in the clouds. He's going to descend. He's going to come at the last trump. He's going to come with his angels. and he's going to resurrect and gather the elect and reward every man to his due. And then God was going to destroy the cosmos. And that was the end of physical time as man understands it. That was 20 years ago. But it wasn't until this understanding and the truth came out about Matthew 16, 27 and 28, which actually probably goes back to about verse 21. And then Matthew 13, Matthew 24, Matthew 23, Luke, Mark, and Revelation was all talking about this one second coming, one coming. I never heard anyone in a church, not one single preacher, and I heard almost every one of these local preachers in Indianapolis all say that there was one coming, not multiple comings, not representative comings, but one physical comings of Christ. And that was it. It wasn't until people started to see the truth that Matthew 16, 27 and 28, and Luke and Mark and Revelation and Peter and what Paul was saying was that it actually occurred in at the destruction of Jerusalem or thereabouts. Did they start to backpedal? Then they come up with these excuses. Well, there's multiple comings. Well, just because it says this, because there were multiple comings in the Old Testament. The only reason why they knew this, John, is because we were teaching them.
I know it.
That. But then they get up in the pew today, act like they've got some extra biblical knowledge, or that Christ or God speaks to them personally and has enlightened them, and now we're the ignorant ones. When we were teaching them years ago, but they couldn't stand before their congregations and say, I made a mistake. I was teaching you wrong. We made an error. The elders and I are lazy in our studies. These guys are coming up. They're telling us that the New Testament is a fulfillment of the Old Testament. We teach that it ended at the cross. So all of this, and it threw the church in a headspin. And they've been backpedaling, lying, cheating, misrepresenting what we're saying for the last 20, 25 years now. It's ridiculous. I'm getting sick of it.
Actually, it's more than 20, 25 years. It's going on about 2000.
Well, I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
In Indianapolis.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Trent, I'll play devil's advocate here. I don't have the devil's mask, but find that episode, guys. There's so much behind it.
I should have put it on.
You don't even know. Oh, Halloween's coming up.
Yeah, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Boy, that would really set these ministers off. Their heads would have spinning around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist.
Well, you know what?
Spitting pea soup.
That doesn't really matter, does it? No. Okay, so Trent, what do you not understand? That Jesus is coming in the future personally and bodily, as he promised he would, and as the angels told his apostles that he would. What do you not understand about that?
I understand. Well, there's nothing to misunderstand. Either Christ did what he said he was going to do, either the Holy Spirit directed these apostles and the writers of the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Bible. Either he told them correct, or the Holy Spirit told them correctly, and God guided everything. Or we have the Holy Spirit, Christ, God, the apostles, the writers in the Bible were all either lying to us, trying to trick us, or confused. Which one is it? Or maybe,
all the above.
Or maybe these ministers in the church and these elders in the church have been so lazy and so worried about their little cliques and who they're going to invite for dinner and how they can go to this other congregation and be patted on the back for such a wonderful job that they do, and how they're so great, and they can write up all their little study guides that they can sell among themselves and make extra cash on the side. All the things that they do in the church today, it's sickening.
Yeah,
absolutely sickening to me.
It is. It's just the futurist doctrine relies on how do I say this without
ignorance.
Well, I was not to offend anybody. Of course, it's really hard not to offend somebody when you're telling
The
them the
truth
truth.
offends. The truth offends. That we have to understand that.
Because
if the truth doesn't offend you, how could you ever be convicted?
there you go.
To know that you need to obey the gospel.
I just read a. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm not going to call any names because I love this brother. I loved this brother. I'm telling you right now. But this is what we're up against. So I'm just going to read this, and just don't call this out.
I won't.
Okay, so somebody sends me a message. I know who the somebody is, but I'm not going to tell you. Sends me a message about something that was posted on, what is this thing called? Something called Instagram.
Not familiar with
Hold on,
it.
guys. I know what Instagram is. Okay, so this was posted on Instagram, not on Facebook. And there's a caption that gives us Genesis 8:21-22. Okay, so you already know where this is going, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here's what Genesis 8:21-22 is. I'm not sure what version this is, but it sounds like it might be maybe a New American Standard or something. But anyway, so here's what Genesis 8:21-22 says. I'm reading off of this that was forwarded to me. The reason this person forwarded this to me is because this person that posted this used to believe the truth and now is publicly reverting back to the lie. And you know what happens to those who have once been enlightened by the truth? Then they go back to their wallowing in the mire. Okay, so I love this brother. I love him. I would do anything for him, and I have. So here's what Genesis 8:21-22 says. The Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. This is not the New American Standard. I don't know what this is. While the earth remaineth, probably New King James, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Okay, so there you go. Genesis 8:21-22. We can spend the rest of the night, tomorrow night, and the next night, and the next night, and the next night talking about this principle. We're not going to. This is just an illustration. Okay, so his comment here is, if I can read this, there we go, it's a little bigger. So there is also a false teaching going around, along with many others, that this world will remain and never be destroyed. It's interesting when you read Genesis 8:21-22, because in verse 22, God says, while the earth remains, which clearly indicates that there will be an end to this world. I also think of 2 Peter 3:10-13. How do you explain that one? Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to explain it. And I hope that this brother is listening, and I hope that this gets back to him. And I'd certainly love to sit down and talk with you if you're listening to this. Have no animosity towards you. I'm worried about you going back to a lie. I can understand why people do this. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand why people will turn from the truth back to the lie. And it's generally 100% peer pressure. Mm-hmm. Some man gets to you, and that's it. Then it's over with.
Can I address a couple of things first about this?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm going to go get my tablet.
Okay.
Because it's bigger to read.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
See, it's interesting that these scholars who translated this chose these certain words, as in Genesis 8:21. It says, neither will I again smite any more living thing as I have done. Now, there are other translations out there that agree with each other, and it says, as I have just done, or I have, or I just have done. So what is it? What's going on here? Verse 21, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, the Lord is contemplating what he had just done, right? He had just killed every living thing. He cursed the ground and he flooded it, and he just killed every living being except those that were saved on the ark. Is that correct?
Mhm.
He says within his heart, I talk to my heart all the time. I speak within my heart a lot. If you're a human being and you have a thought process, you do that. You think within your heart. So he's thinking to himself, I will not curse the ground anymore for man's sake. So you're going to curse the ground for the ground's sake? So what did the ground do for God to want to curse the ground? Okay. Just think about that. I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have just done, is what the more accurate, coming from the pictographs and things like that, from the earliest manuscripts. So God is speaking. He sees this thing. He sees this new heaven and earth that he's creating through Noah. And he speaks within himself, I cannot do that. So God had a change of heart, didn't he? Now, do we know that God had a change of heart previous to this? So is this talking about God's heart and his approach to man more than it is about killing someone either by fire or by water? You think he's saying within his heart, wow, I cursed the ground and I killed every living thing except those on this ark. I will not do it again like I just have done. I just have done this. So where does he have a change of heart previous to this? Go back to chapter 6, Genesis 6, verse 1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took to them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. He's speaking within his spirit, within his heart. When we say in my heart, I'm saying within my spirit. I tell Noelia, I love you with all of my heart and all of my soul. What I'm saying is with all of my being, I love you. God is saying to himself, in my spirit, I will not always strive with man. So what does he do? He has a change of heart. Go over to verse 5, Genesis 6, verse 5. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Isn't that what he just said? Did he just not say that in 8:21? He just said that, okay? It's a good thing we have a just God and a thinking God, because we surely don't have that among men. And verse 6, and it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. It grieved him in his spirit of the wickedness and evil that he saw man doing in Noah's age, in Noah's time. So what did he do? He tells Noah, he finds this just man, and he tells him, prepare this ark, because the end of man has come upon me. So we go through this whole process of Noah building this ark, preaching the word to this dying world at that time, and they refused it, they rejected it, they mocked him, they laughed him to scorn, and God destroys them all. So after the flood, he sits down and he saw what he had just done, killed every living thing, and he spoke to his own heart and said, I will not do that again. How can you come up with in 2 Peter 3 that it wasn't that he repented of killing everything, but he repented of the design that he did it with? I killed him with water. This time I'm going to kill him with fire. How ridiculous can that be?
Okay, it's ridiculous. it's an easy argument to make when all you're used to doing is pulling part of one verse out and saying, here's my doctrine based on this part of this one verse. So that's what happens. Well, any good Bible student is going to understand, if you want to study the Bible, guess what? You're going to have to go back and study the Bible, not the translations. Yes, they're a good guide and so forth, but especially with the invention of the internet, guys, with the internet, it has been so easy just to look up a word and there you go, you can figure it out.
Let me repeat this again. Did God repent of the way that he killed man, or did he repent that he killed man? Like he repented that he created them? Which one is it? Now, people, stop listening to your ignorant ministers and your elders and start thinking for yourselves.
Okay, so here's the way this lays out. So in Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, while the earth remains. Okay, ready for this? So we have to understand that every passage that we look at has to harmonize with every other passage that we look at on the same or similar subject.
And one of the oldest manuscripts that they have found of the Hebrew Bible says, not while the earth remains, it says yet again, yet again. So God reestablished the nature of things on earth.
So what you're going to see here is why it would say yet again. Okay, so the word while is od, O-D, in the Hebrew language.
Ode.
Mm-hmm. And as soon as it brings this up, I'll read it to you. Okay, it is an adverb, substantive, adverb, accusative, adverb, ode. And here's what it means. Okay, the simple definition is a going around continuance. It's not a limitation. This is an action word. Okay, so what this means is it goes and 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 it goes. And here's how we can see that in the English. In other words, it's a continuance. Still, yet again, beside is the idea, and that's pretty much the definition of it. Whether you're looking at Strong's or Brown Driver and Briggs, a going round continuance. He says, but mostly used as. So why didn't they put here as the earth remains?
Because
it has to fit their paradigm.
Because
the translators put the words in there that they think fits what everybody else believes.
Yeah, the translators at that time.
Not always, but often.
If you don't understand the era, the time that they were translating this, then you can't begin to understand why they chose certain words over more accurate words. You can't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Great Britain, the world was pretty much ruled at that time by Great Britain, by kings of Britain. And the state religion was Catholicism. And Catholicism had its fingers, its hands around the throat of its people. Either you agreed with the state religion or you died. So when these scholars got together, they were not commissioned by Prince James originally. It wasn't until they were doing this and was found out that they were doing this that they went to him with a drawing of his sitting on a throne and presented it to him and said, we're going to put this on and we're going to name this the King James Bible. Then he bought into it and he sanctioned it and he supported it. Had they not done that, he would have had them killed probably.
Yeah. Yep, no question about it. So, it's easy to figure this out, guys. Even the translators and modern day scholars do the exact same thing. They include words that are not there. So anyway, let me continue with the definition of this. As an adverb, the word while, ode, is expressing continuance. This is what Brown, Driver, and Briggs say. These are the scholars. These are the guys who know the Greek language. Persistence, usually of the past or present, still, yet. Okay, so here's what he's saying. This is expressing continuance, persistence. Now, listen to this. You're going to have some really serious arguments to make here, and just going to have to come up with something if you don't plug in what the word actually means. And then the verse here itself tells us what while or ode means. But here's what it means. Persistence. Now, notice this, continuance. It says should be as the earth remains. That would be the best way to interpret this. Not while, but as. Or you could just leave it out and it would be the earth remains. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. Now listen, shall not cease. This is what we call a Hebrew parallelism. It's also, I guess you could call this an
inclusio in one verse.
An inclusio in one verse, because he starts with the same word, the same meaning, and ends with the same meaning, and everything in the middle of it is referring to the same thing. So how would it be possible to look at Genesis 8, verse 22, and read, while the earth remains, it shall not cease? That makes no sense whatsoever. That makes God just, hey, God's just tricking us. You know, he's using language that we can't understand, that there's no way that we're ever going to get. I have a real problem with that. This passage says the earth will remain. Now, and it shall not cease, and neither will the cycles of the earth. I can't explain that to you. Not a person alive or who has ever been alive can explain that to you.
Now,
the physics of it, because some guy today said, well, the second law of thermodynamics demands that the earth will eventually,
the sun will burn out.
The sun will burn out and the earth will wind down. And
science, so-called falsely.
Yeah. Do you believe the Bible or do you believe men?
No.
God created it. Men are trying to figure it out. Let's see. I'm going to go with the one who made it over the ones who are trying to figure it out.
Let's put ourselves back in the late 1500s when they began working on this. And we know what kind of justice was meted out during that time in history, right?
Yeah.
And so as an example, let's look at it today. You see science propagating so many theories about how man came to the earth, how we evolved out of animals, and they're still trying to defend that, Darwin's theory. And then we have people on both sides of the aisle going, well, climate change is destroying the earth. And then other scientists say, well, it's a hoax. Well, when you get down and you follow the money, you follow that who's ever getting the money is going to say what needs to be said in order to keep getting the money, especially if it's your livelihood. That's the same thing in the church. That's why these ministers won't teach the truth. I know with our speaking to some of these guys, John, that we know these guys believe the truth.
I know. We've seen it many times. Many times.
But they won't, because of the money will end. And the people will leave. They'll leave the church. So back in the late 1500s, when they began working on this project, they did it first in secret, and then it became public, and then they had to appeal to the prince in order to keep their heads from getting cut off.
Yeah.
And being egotistical, like most leaders of countries are, no matter who you are, no matter what country it is, when they present this as, this is your book, and then he gets to have his little say in there about, like what immersion is and baptism is. Yeah, he's going to buy into it, right? Just like the scientists today do.
Okay, so Rick Brown beat me to it, but that's okay. It's interesting what Trent had to say. But
not so much.
But the same concept, the same style of writing and exegesis of trying to get a point across is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4. Now notice this, because if you remember back in Genesis 8, it says there's this cycle. That's what the word ode means. It's a cycle, it's cyclical. It's persistence, right? That's what it said. Okay, so in Ecclesiastes 1, it flipped around on me. In verse 4, it says, oh, wait a minute. One generation, let me read this. A generation goes and a generation comes. Do you see the cycle? One comes, one goes. But the earth remains forever.
Well, let me ask you this.
I mean, hang on just a second here. Let's follow this logic. A generation comes and goes. So when are these generations going to end if the earth remains forever? Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's look about that. Let's look at this cycle of nature, the order of things that God established. Okay, before they went into the ark, what does it say? What does it say? What does Genesis say? Before they went into the ark, they were given in marriage. They were living their lives on earth like nothing was going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then God interrupted that order of things and it began to rain. And it never stopped raining until the earth and all living things on the earth, except in the ark, was drowned, right? God stopped the natural order of things. There was no more harvest. There was no more seed time. There were no more seasons. It was bam. The earth was flooded and you had an ark floating on the earth. Then God recedes the water down, lands the ark. Noah comes out, does what he does, builds an altar, offers a sacrifice. And God said, now I reestablish what I had stopped momentarily to destroy the earth.
Yeah. Okay, so back to some exegeting and some reading and some defining. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go to the Hebrew word for forever, la olam, or olam. Really is the word. Let me pull it up here. And this was, by the way, is a preposition in the text. So here's what we read. Brown Driver. Well, we'll just look at all this stuff. Long duration, antiquity, futurity. Okay. It means ages, all successive, always, ancient times, continual, days of old, eternal, eternity, ever. These are how this word is used. Okay, so when this says that the earth remains forever, Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 4, this is how this word olam is used. Everlasting, forever, forever and ever, forever again, forevermore, lasting, long, long ago, long past, long time, never, old, permanent, permanently, perpetual, perpetually. That's how the word is used. Some I don't know how many times. I don't see how many times. But anyway, that's how many times it's used. So it means, according to Brown, Driver, and Briggs, it means indefinite futurity with preposition, forever. So this says that generation will come and generation will go, but the earth remains forever. So men are going to die off. Isn't this very, very reminiscent of, or Psalms 90 actually is reminiscent of this? So who am I to say that forever doesn't mean forever when even the Greek scholars, though they don't like it, they admit that it means forever.
Yeah, when you have a hell and damnation ministry and you scare people into coming every week to church or to giving their tithes or giving their livelihoods and their family and everything they own to the church, you're going to keep scaring them that at any time this, any time that, who's tricking? Is God tricking man or is man tricking man? So let's look at this a little bit closer on verse 22 in Genesis 8.
All right.
Okay, so let's read on in Ecclesiastes 1:4. One generation passes away, another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also arises, and the sun goes down and hastens to his place where he arose. The wind goes toward the south and turneth about unto the north. It whirls about continually, and the wind returneth according again, according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full unto the place from whence the rivers come. Thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. So, I mean, so what is the writer saying here? All things continue as God established them, again in Genesis 8:22.
That's right. Look at verse 9, Ecclesiastes 1:9. Let me read this.
Yeah, go ahead.
That which has been is that which will be. Do you see the perpetual nature of this statement? That which has been is that which will be. He just read. Why do the oceans not drain dry after a while? Because it's a never-ending cycle. We know about this water cycle. We get it. We can at least figure that one out. So the ocean doesn't drain dry or evaporate, however you want to look at it. It's just that simple. So when I see my good brother who has turned from the truth back to a lie, that's cause for great concern for me. Because when a person ignores the truth, especially someone who has seen it, and then says, well, and I don't know what his motives are. I have some opinions, but when a person says, well, I need to maintain this relationship, or I need to make this person happy or that person happy, or I'm going to tell you right now, that is not Christianity. It is not Christianity to think that you can just, pick and choose what you're going to believe and what you're going to teach. That is not Christianity. And anyone who teaches that, I know eschatology, and I get that Jesus already returned, but I'm just not going to teach it. I'm just going to teach love. Wait a minute. Eschatology is love. Right? Let me prove this. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Okay? Do you realize that when the Lord returns, that's when everlasting life comes in? Hebrews 9 verse 28, that's when everlasting life comes in. So salvation comes with the return of the Lord. You cannot separate eschatology from soteriology, from the plan of salvation. Paul didn't do it. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but I came to bring a sword. And that's exactly where we're at. If we're going to stand for the truth, it's not going to be easy. People are going to hate us. They murdered the innocent Son of God because of his stand for the truth.
Yeah, Paul.
Christianity is not for wimps, I guess.
No,
you might say.
I guess that's true. But Paul and Peter, John, the Hebrew writer, all these guys wrote about, these letters to the Jews who had converted to Christianity, kept wanting to go back to the old law.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that some of these people were disowned by their family. They were kicked out of synagogues. They lost their livelihoods. They were fired. We know that they were martyred quite a bit. They were executed over and over. Their families and they lost everything for the cause of Christ. And at some point, that weighs up on you, and you go back because your need or your want to survive and to live kicks in. And so, and in love is a difficult thing, especially when you have to choose between right and wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult thing. I feel sorry. I feel sorry for someone who would go from the truth and be a big proponent of it and really was studying it out and really helping to further the truth, and then steps away from it because Of peer pressure?
Well, I'm going to answer Roy here real fast. Roy, no, it would not be enough. If what's in the Bible is not enough, then any more is not going to be enough either.
Right. Christ said in Matthew 24, and it counts in the Gospels, and then what was given to John from God to Christ to his angel to give to John, and then Christ speaking in Matthew 16, basically around 21 through 28, Christ speaking it himself, and people deny it. And I think it's pretty plain what it says in Matthew. It's pretty plain. You'd have to twist the scriptures to get a different meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Or to qualify it as something else.
Okay, so that leaves us with a big dilemma. Jesus plainly said, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see me coming in my kingdom. Well, so the futurist goes to Acts chapter 1, and they want to say, well, 5 times it is said in Acts chapter 1 that they will see him come back. But wait a minute. Who's the ones who pick and choose about seeing? And you want to say it means the same, it means what it says what it means in Acts 1, 9 through 11, that they are visibly, ocularly going to see him come back. Okay. Then I want you to think about this. Jesus said, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see me coming in my kingdom. What's the difference? You just want to pick and choose? They really, the futurist, what do you call these guys? The futurist people, the futurist teachers, those who teach a future return of Jesus Christ, would it be a cult?
Right.
They accuse us of being a cult. Why not?
Yeah, when I say ignorant, and I say ignorant ministers or ignorant elders, what I'm saying is biblically ignorant.
Yeah.
When an elder or a minister tells you that the Old Testament is of no consequence to Christianity, something is wrong.
Big time wrong.
Something is majorly wrong.
Huge time, big time wrong. So, why would you not believe the truth? Why do people ignore the truth? Let me point this out here. So, the parallel passage to Matthew 16, 27 and 28 is Mark chapter 8, starting in about, I think it's about verse 34 or so. And here's what it says. And he summoned his disciples, and he said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, okay, and take up his cross and follow me. The first thing about Christianity is denying yourself, denying what you've been taught, denying what you've learned, denying your heritage, denying everything. You have to deny yourself. All right? Now, a lot of people want to teach, well, that means that you don't go buy the new car, you get a used car instead. No, this is denying your heritage. I mean, that might be part of it, but it's certainly not the whole scheme of Christianity. You have to deny yourself. Let's keep reading. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. This is where it gets pretty serious. And take up his, wait a minute. Sorry about that. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel. Remember what I just said a moment ago? The gospel includes eschatology as much as it does soteriology. You cannot have one without the other. Paul did not separate it when he went to the brethren at Berea and Thessalonica and everywhere else. He used the scriptures, even to the Gentiles on Mars Hill, the pagans on Mars Hill.
Right. And if a minister tells you,
which is the Old Testament,
if a minister comes and tells you that he wasn't really quoting the Old Testament scripture because it meant something to Christianity, that guy should be disqualified.
Yeah, that's not right.
if an elder or minister should be removed from the pulpit, and an elder should be placed back down where he belongs, back in Bible school classes.
Dispensationalist. Don, you are on fire. Okay, so do you see that? But I'm not done. I'm still in Mark 8. This is the parallel passage to Matthew 16, 27, 28. What do you suppose Jesus has said here? If you don't follow after me, if you don't deny yourself, if you don't take up your cross, if you don't lay down your life for me, then what's the rest? Verse 36, for what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeit his own soul? Okay, so a man who knows the truth and rejects it so that he can gain the whole world, what has he done? It's right there, it's evident. He forfeited his soul. What profit was there in that? And I know that it's not easy. And being a Christian has never been easy. Standing for the truth and defending the very words of the Lord has never been an easy thing to do. And there are lots of people who oppose Christians and have for 2,000 years because Christians have opposed error and stood for truth, even if it meant being crucified upside down, boiled in oil, burned on a cross, whatever the case is, whatever history records that happened to Christians, then they thought it was worth it. They thought there's where the profit lies, not in pleasing men. But I'm not done here. Verse 37, what will a man give in exchange for his soul? Now notice what he says here in verse 38. This is Acts 8, verse 38. We've established the context. We've seen what Jesus is saying, that you must follow him, take up your cross, deny yourself, deny men. What would you give in exchange for your soul? What's the context that he's talking about? Ready for this? These very words that Jesus spoke. He says, if you're not going to defend these words and believe them and follow them, listen to this. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. And we're going to stop right there for just a moment. Was Jesus talking about eschatology here, Trent? He's talking about clouds? Well, I don't think it actually says clouds, does it? But he's going to come in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. So when Jesus is coming in the glory of his Father with his angels, what do you suppose that day is?
25 years ago, the ministers in Indianapolis were teaching that was the second coming of Christ. Okay?
Yeah.
It wasn't until we pointed out that was actually the coming into destruction of Jerusalem that they had to spin their heads around and try to get together in their little cliques and try to figure out how they're going to defeat this, because they can't stand up and admit that they were wrong.
That's right.
Because they become a laughing stock to their congregations.
Yeah.
Or that they were fearing their own congregations.
So there it is, just laid right out. If you're ashamed of Jesus saying that I'm going to come in the glory of my Father with my angels, then he says, I'll be ashamed of you when I come. Well, who was he talking about? He wasn't talking to us.
No, who was he talking to? In verse 34, and when he had called the people unto him with his disciples, Christ, thousands of people at a time,
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So there were, at least his disciples and some other people.
Do you think
he drew crowds wherever he went?
Absolutely.
So when he said when he's talking to his disciples, people, he said, there's some standing here that will see me coming in the glory of the Father. The first thing, if they're Jews, they're thinking, okay, the glory of the Father. Let me see. How did the glory of the Father come in the scriptures? Oh, he came on a cloud. He came hidden. He came and he destroyed nations, and he said, I would destroy the earth. I destroy this. I destroy the earth. I destroy the heavens. I do this. I change the order. I do all of this stuff. And they're like, oh, so when Christ comes back, we're going to still be alive because he's going to come just like the Father has. But no, not in the Church of Christ. No.
Really? It's not just the Church of Christ. It's every denomination believes that Jewish propagated first century lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just modified. That's all it is. Okay, so do you think that there's anyone? I mean, can you honestly, with every good intention in your heart, can you honestly, truthfully say that that crowd there, when they heard Jesus say, "Whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation," first off, do you think that they didn't identify with that when he said this sinful generation and adulterous? Okay, that was scathing to them. So they identified themselves as the target audience of the events that he was saying would take place. They had to. Is there any way that these people could have possibly said, "Well, no, this is going to be 2,000 years or more in the future"? No.
No,
No, absolutely
No.
not.
no.
Now, notice the rest of this. He says, "The Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes, ashamed of him." Ashamed of who? The people in that generation, when he comes in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. Do you suppose any of them went, no, we don't have to worry. This isn't coming yet. He just identified them as the generation that he would come to.
But John,
Am I wrong about that?
a day is 1,000 years
Oh, I keep
to the
forgetting
Lord.
that.
It's 1,000 years to the Lord.
I keep forgetting the confusion hermeneutic.
Yeah.
God is confused, apparently.
And but they never quote that 1,000 years is as a day.
No, it's just a day is 1,000 years.
Until you,
Like
until
that's
you,
some formula
yeah,
to plug in everywhere.
right. Until you,
Jesus is still on the
when, you,
tomb.
when they turn around and say, well, a day is 1,000 years, and you say, okay, so Christ was in the heart of the earth for 3,000 years. Oh,
Got another 1,000 years to go, guys.
but
That's the case.
no, because 1,000 years is as a day.
So
Okay,
who picks and chooses then?
yeah. So what are you telling me? Then they run off to another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So, but I ask you this: if a day is 1,000 years, and there's 24 hours in a day, so
That's 24,000 years.
okay. Well, that's an hour. But if an hour is 24 and it's less than a day, it's 1/24th of a day, and a day is 1,000 years. So that would be 41 years, and 41.6 years is an hour in a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get an hour to mean 2,000 plus and continuing on years?
You can't.
It's 2,000 years and on now. So a day is 1,000 years, but an hour is 2,000 plus years and continuing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Good
Okay.
math. Huh?
I got that.
Yeah. They'll never plug it in. Okay, but see, we're still here in Mark 8. We just got through verse 38. And if you're just joining us, please go back and listen to this when we're done. And look at these verses. Okay, but we're not done. Just because the chapter ends here doesn't mean that the thought ends. These chapters were just added, 700 years ago or something? I don't remember how that works.
They were added for better study, and and the person or the people who did it, they did it. They made mistakes. Sometimes they put paragraphs where there weren't. They put chapter divisions where there weren't.
Mm-hmm. But look here, okay? Jesus had just said to that generation, he called them out. He said they were the sinful generation. By the way, this is descriptive of Deuteronomy 32. So just need to do that study. Okay, he had just said this generation, he's going to be ashamed of the people in that generation when he comes. Do you suppose any of them had any doubt? Maybe if they had doubt, they were going, wait a minute, did he just say that he was going to come in our generation? He would have his parousia in our generation, which is the terminology used by his disciples.
Well, let me ask you this. So now the argument for futurists is because they're grasping at any straw they can pick out of the pile.
Mm-hmm.
When they say, well, that was his transfiguration. They saw him coming.
I love that one. Love it. But it's not right.
James, Peter, and John.
Yeah.
Saw his transfiguration, right?
Yeah.
So that's his coming in the glory. But when was that? It's only like 6 days later, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, wait a minute.
According to which version?
But no, it's the day of Pentecost.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
when it
yeah,
was.
day of Pentecost.
Pentecost means 50. So let me see. 6 days after Christ said this, he's transfigured. That following late, very early in the morning, the next morning. I don't know. Maybe what do you think about 1? Who knows? 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Maybe, yeah.
He gets arrested, and you take him to this kangaroo trial. So that's 7 days. So then he's crucified. He's in the heart of the earth for 3 and 4 days, 3 days, 3 nights. So what that is at most 11 days. And then he's on the earth for how many days? About 40?
About 40.
And then he ascends, right? So day of Pentecost is 50 days after Passover, right? Okay. So we're talking 3 days after he ascends, maybe, or sometime after he ascends.
I'm good with that.
They meet and they receive the Holy Spirit, and then John and Peter go to the synagogues and start preaching on the day of Pentecost, right?
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there were quite a few people alive still. So
A month and a half later?
Yeah, a month and a half later.
No more than 2 months.
So they say that when you see the kingdom come in its glory, in the glory of the Father, then let me see. And when he called the people unto him and his disciples, so there was a big multitude. So let me think about this. So roughly 50 days later, 55 days later, all these people were there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they saw the kingdom come in glory because they were able to speak in tongues.
They don't understand the concept of the kingdom. There's not a kingdom in the Bible that was established in one day.
Did these people know that were there when they were speaking in tongues? Did they know that the Holy Spirit had fallen upon Peter?
They knew something had happened, but they didn't know what this was. Peter had to tell them. This is what Joel's prophesying about.
But
Joel, Isaiah.
So was there a cloud? Did Christ come in the glory of his Father on Pentecost? You're speechless because you're thinking to yourself, how could somebody come up with such a crazy idea?
But they do. They do. The fact is, guys, let me go back to this train of thought here.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. So we had actually started back at verse 34 about half an hour ago.
I'm sorry.
This is good, though. But, okay, so it doesn't end in verse 38. It continues on through chapter 9 and verse 1. So why would they put a chapter division here? Is somebody trying to monkey with the process? I don't know. But it sure looks awful fishy. And Jesus was saying to them, who was he saying this to? To the people he had just told he was going to come in their lifetime. So go back to verse 34. And maybe they were a little confused about that. And they were going, did he really just say that? And then he says, yes, truly, truly. I'm telling you, there are some who are standing. So he clears this up as clear as a bell. There's some who are standing here who will not die or taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power.
He's saying, you better believe what I just said. Or he says, believe you me, as they say.
That's what truly, truly means. Hey, listen up. This is noteworthy.
Yeah,
truly,
believe
truly.
You me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This is immutable. This is an immutable truth.
So who died on Pentecost?
Lego. There you go, Roy.
Yeah, who died before Pentecost? The only one that we have a record of would be Judas, right?
Historically, we don't know of any famines or wars or anything that had happened. Matter of fact, this was during the time of the Pax Romana. And what that was an unprecedented time of peace during the Roman rule of the world.
Yeah, things were so stable that Christ told his disciples, go in until you're be endowed from on high.
Mm-hmm.
So they went into hiding And so everything was peace and quiet.
Yeah.
The Jews had done what they wanted to do. They got rid of this evil man who was preaching preaching against the Jews and against the temple and all of that. And they got rid of him. And they quashed this uprising.
Jesus was the only Jew being persecuted, essentially. There was no persecution going on. The Jews were not being persecuted. It was coming. I mean, it was definitely coming, but it wasn't going on at that time. They actually said, well, we're going to have to sacrifice this one guy for the good of the whole nation of Israel. They knew what they were doing. And then, of course, he wasn't the first one. He wasn't the first innocent person to be crucified, but you get the point. Jesus said, some of you standing here will still be alive. Some of you. Trent, if you know I like M&Ms, right? And sometimes I give you some of my M&Ms.
Yeah, sometimes you do.
Sometimes. It's only because I like him. I would share the whole thing with him if I had to just split them out.
Yeah,
but most of the time, he gets some of them. Is some everybody or all of my package of M&Ms, or is it some of them? Well, everybody in the world knows if I gave Trent some M&Ms, some of my M&Ms, I'm actually saying I didn't give him all of them. I just gave him some of them.
You gave me more than one.
Gave him more than one, but not the whole thing. That's exactly, Jesus just used, God speaks to man as man speaks to man. There's nothing here that is necessary. There has to be so confusing that we can't figure this out, especially with some study. There are some things, and I admit that's hard to be understood. Even Peter said that about some of the writings of Paul. That's hard to be understood. But, man, you just gotta love Roy. That's awesome. Okay, so there you go. Not, some of them would be alive when Jesus would return. He answered their question at least twice. He made it so clear to them that this was going to happen in their time. And also, notice what this version says. Mark 9, verse 1. There are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power. Some people will still be alive after the kingdom has come with power. Some of that generation will still be alive.
Well, you know kind of how I do things. We've studied enough together. We've gone out teaching and trying to teach this truth to enough people that how I work and I know how you work. And I always one of the first things I always like to do is take them to John 21 and to either Mark 8:38 and Mark 9:1 or Matthew, and I have them explain it. Now, you take somebody who has not been poisoned with a false doctrine or someone innocent in their studies. They've not been indoctrinated with a lie. And you ask them, what does this? Just read it. Just read it, and you tell me what it thinks. You don't have to say a word to them other than read this. What do you think it means? And what do they always say? They always say this. You mean there's some people still alive today?
Yeah.
Or you mean to tell me John is still alive?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever had not one person I've ever asked to explain that, tell me anything different. Not one person.
You would not believe this. Even people in the Church of Christ. Okay, so the Church of Christ is not exempt from desperation explanations, right? And they will say, well, I guess that there's 2,000-year-old Thessalonians hiding out till the return of the Lord.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're not lying. That's the truth.
I really wish that we were making that up. But okay, so I want to switch gears majorly right now.
Okay.
And we don't have to talk about this for very long. But some of you all might know that.
Well, what gear are we in right now?
Oh, man, we were in overdrive.
Okay.
This is overdrive.
Okay.
Maybe we're downshifting and ratcheting it down a little bit. But so anyway, either way, you can bet it's a wild ride. Okay, so many of y'all know that our congregation has, over the course of the last, 3 months, stopped having Sunday evening services. That's the West Side Church of Christ in Indianapolis, Indiana, at 2675 Kentucky Avenue.
And
Just
what-
saying
And just, they hate us so much. What do they say about us now, John?
that we're wrong. They thought we were wrong already. I got news for you all. I
You
mean,
can't be a right church if you don't have two services.
two services, right? So, I mean, there's a multiplicity of reasons why we did that, and we've already done a video or two on it, and talked about it a couple times. But okay, so suffice it to say that we've done that. Well, for the first 2.5 months, up until the last couple weeks, I was in the middle of trying to dig out of a monstrous hole, and it's getting better, but it's not done. But so I still got lots of work to do, like everybody else. But I wasn't able to go out anywhere on Sunday evening. Now I am. So for the last 2 weeks, I visited a couple local churches of Christ here in the Indianapolis area, in Indianapolis and surrounding, and I'm going to hit them all. I'm going to all of them. And the first one that I went to, I really haven't decided if I'm going to name these names. Up to this point, I haven't been. But
Well,
I don't know. Well, I'm just going to have to think about it.
We need to pray about that. We need some probably some input from some of our closest friends.
I can tell you
Roy
this.
Ryan and these guys, because
There will at least be hints in the background.
yeah,
I'll tell you that.
but we want to give these congregations and these ministers and elders a chance to respond before we start naming names.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one I went to,
Because we're not doing this out of nefarious
No.
ideas.
no, my goal with this is simply to just get the
Open
word
up
out.
a dialogue.
Open up a dialogue. Hey, you know what? I'm not Satan, which actually there are members of my own family, albeit a little distant, that refer to me as Satan incarnate. And nobody there to defend me. It's sad. But either way, I've got some joy in my heart, and I'm going to go out and I want to spread this message. And the message is the gospel of Jesus Christ as proved by eschatology. And that's what this is all about. So here you go. The first one I went to, there were a couple people there. This was 2 Sundays ago. There were some that didn't know me at all, so they had no problem shaking my hand, welcoming me, and welcoming me to come back.
Oh, invite
So
me.
yeah, hey, come back. We would love to have you. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'll take you up on that offer. However, the elders told me not to come back, and that was the bottom line. If you're going to come back here and pass out literature, and which I wasn't doing, I had cards with me. And by the way, unless I just forget them or run out, I pass out cards wherever I go. I keep them with me so that I can, if I'm at Burger King or McDonald's or Walmart or whatever, and I run into somebody that's interested in talking, I'm going to give them a card. So this is nothing new for me. Apparently, it was to the preacher that I talked to, because he said he doesn't do that unless people ask for it. Okay, so wait a minute. You want to know how many people have come up to me out of the blue and said, "Hey, will you give me a card so we can talk about the plan of salvation?" No.
He just takes a really more extremely passive approach.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way to put it. It's extremely passive. It's like not preaching. If you're a gospel preacher, sorry guys, you got to pull these pants up and make them snug, because you better get out there and start preaching. Was that pretty good?
Yeah.
Well, they get the time. It's okay, but
Never heard that before.
yeah, I just made it up.
Oh, okay.
I kind of mixed a couple metaphors there, but either way. But, this is our responsibility. And I told him, I said, you got to make people listen. He said, you can't make people listen. You can't make people listen. I said, are you a gospel preacher or not? What did Peter do on the day of Pentecost? He stood up in the midst of a group of people that did not want to hear him preach. What did Stephen do? Oh, wow. Stephen, oh, wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, what did Paul do?
Paul did the same. I mean, you look at the gospel preachers in the New Testament. You tell me that they took a passive approach to preaching. I don't think so. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all that. I had a video on Facebook. I haven't put it on YouTube yet because it takes me a long time to download that and put it on there. And I'm going to figure out how to do this so we can have a playlist on there so that you can watch this. Each week after I go and visit these churches, I'm going to do a video on my experience there and what happened. So the first week was not good. Most everybody ignored me. There was one good brother who came up to me and he shook my hand, and he was legitimately thankful to see me. Pretty much everybody else ignored me. Some of the people that were members of our congregation that left completely ignored me. So we had about half our congregation leave.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact,
Happens to me too.
that building, and I don't know if this is just what usually happens to them or not, but inside of just a very few minutes, empty. It was empty. And the only people who stayed around were me, the preacher who was an elder, and the other elder, and the preacher who was preaching there that night. I'm going to tell you a little story about him in a minute. He's just a young man. And the song leader was there, and they were listening. I know they were listening because they tried to act like they weren't listening, but they were only 6 or 7 or maybe 10 at the most pews up, and it was just us 5 actually, there in the sanctuary part. They were listening. So anyway, to make a long story short, they didn't like the fact that I was there, and they told me not to come back. And I don't care how, what kind of lipstick you put on that pig, you're covering up the fact that you're ignoring a man who says they're lost, or you say they're lost, and you won't teach them the truth. He categorically denied. I gave him the opportunity to come and to preach at our congregation and tell us the truth. No strings attached. All you got to do is come and teach us. We'll set aside some time. You come and you preach a sermon, you give a lecture, whatever you want to do. You pass it. I told him, I said, you bring all the material you want. You bring cards and give them to every single member. You give them 10 cards apiece. I don't care. All we want is the truth. If you can show us the truth, then why would you not do that? And he said, I will not do it. I refuse. And so did the other elder. He refused as well.
You know why?
I know why.
Because that elder knows I go there.
Well, yeah.
And he's afraid I'm going to ask him some questions.
Well, hey, fair is fair. If you're going to come and tell us we're wrong, we're going to ask you why. So he actually said that. Well, he said, don't want to ask questions. I'm like, well, of course they're going to want to ask questions. I want to ask questions. If I'm wrong about this, I want to know. But don't think I'm going to be a pushover about it and just say, oh, yeah, okay, well, yeah, you say I'm wrong, so I guess I'll change. No way. No way is that going to happen. But I will change if you can show me that I'm wrong. Let's see here. We've got the second one I went to this past Sunday. They were, for the most part, very warm and very welcoming. Again, this is a congregation where many of our former members fled to because they didn't want to confront the error.
Well, they knew that they could not.
They knew they couldn't.
They couldn't justify their leaving.
By the way, do you realize that when all of those people left, I had not yet said, well, this is what I believe. I hadn't said that yet. They left because Trent came. Trent and another brother, Ron Burr was his name. And they came and needed our spiritual help. I'm just telling you, I was an elder at the time, and this is exactly what happened. And I mean, am I wrong about this? This is what happened. I hadn't started teaching it. I was super struggling with it. These are things that I saw by myself. I didn't need anybody to point anything. I've never read anything up to this day. I've not read anything from Max King. I did not know Don Preston existed or William Bell. I didn't know anything about Steve Baisden or Holger Neubauer or the venerable Roy Runyon. I didn't know anything about these guys. Scott Claft. I mean, Brent Bishel. There's a litany of faithful gospel preachers who are seeing this and coming to this and doing this because it's right. Well, so anyway, they all left simply because Trent and Ron were there and they needed our spiritual help. Somebody's going to have to tell me why a local congregation exists. Is it to lock the doors and keep everybody out unless they meet a strict test? You had to take a test, didn't you, at a congregation?
Pretty much.
You had to fill out a questionnaire, make sure he was pure. That's the only reason you would do that. I'll tell you what.
And then they wanted me to sign it saying that whatever the elders, basically any.
This is a Church of Christ.
Yeah, they wanted
conservative.
So what did they want to know? I've never been married, so they wanted to know. Some of the questions were, when were you? When did you consider yourself, or when did you obey the gospel? And what did obeying the gospel entail for you? And then, have you ever been married? If you've been married, how many times? Have you ever been divorced? Was it a scriptural divorce? Who was at fault in the divorce? What do you believe about the Church of Christ? Just really crazy stuff. And at the end of it, they wanted me to sign a statement saying that I would agree with any disciplinary actions that the elders decided to, if they needed to discipline me. I would agree to whatever they said to do. But here's the thing, they didn't make everybody fill that out.
Why you?
They picked me. I don't know. But they didn't make everybody else do that. They picked and choose. And I told them I'm not signing it. And so they probably knew then that I was going to be trouble. Because I'm not going to lie down for a strong arm tactic like that.
Well, you're just not the type, and neither should anybody else be the type to just accept what the elders say.
Right.
Okay, I'm not saying be disrespectful.
Yeah.
I'll preach a whole sermon on how a congregation needs to have respect and how you should treat the elders. But the elders have responsibility to teach. The elders have responsibility to stop the mouths of the gainsayers. Okay, so what is that? In other words, there's obviously a dialogue going on between the elders and the congregation. It's not like they sit on some pedestal and they're never supposed to be spoken to, and that when they speak, they speak ex cathedra, however. And then everybody just stops and listens, like E.F. Hutton speaking.
Yeah,
That's an old reference.
they had a question, or I called the minister who was one of the elders, and I said, by what authority do you even have this questionnaire out? And he said, well, we need to know your background. In other words, we need to know if you're pure, if we can accept you into our congregation. And I said, but what authority do you have where I have to sign a paper saying that I would bow down to you?
And crazy.
He said, well, you don't have to sign it. I said, I'm not going to sign it. I said, show me in the Bible where that's at. So I should have just walked away from them. But he would just show up at my house unannounced. And he told me this too. He said, it's your duty to support your local congregation.
I love the next part of this.
So I was in the middle between 3 different churches of Christ, about equal distance. And I aligned myself with more of the conservative Church of Christ, and they were very conservative. Mm-hmm. But I had never, ever seen in a Church of Christ where they had you sign your life over to an elder. So
Crossroads movement did that.
So when this minister retired, he moved from that county to Indianapolis within, not within a short distance of Decatur Township Church of Christ, and not too far away from Westside Church of Christ, or Rockville Road Church of Christ, or 10th Street Church of Christ,
Mooresville,
Southport, all these churches of Christ in Indiana, but he chose to go from Decatur Township, where he was only a couple of, maybe a mile or two away from Decatur Township
Decatur.
Church of Christ. He drove all the way to
Burgers.
not two, but 3 towns south of there to Bargersville. After he told me that it was my duty to support the local
church.
Yes.
Oh, it just illustrates that they're just men, you know, and okay, but so here's what I want to say. In the Indianapolis area, there is well over 100 churches of Christ. If you want to whittle them down to and separate them out from the conservative and the liberal and the mainstream or whatever, there's still churches of Christ, and thousands of churches around. I got my work cut out for me. Every Sunday, we're going to go out. We have identified several congregations that start at 2:00, and I'm going to go to the 2:00 service. Then after that, I'm going to try to hit a congregation that's close and go to the 5:00 service or 6. And so here's what I'm saying. If I'm by myself or Trent's with me or some other people, great, but I'm coming. May not be able to do it every single Sunday, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I just want you all to know that, hey, I have the best intentions about this. I'm not trying to upset anybody, but you know something? The truth does upset people. So if that upsets you, that I come to your congregation and I want you to tell me the truth, then you're going to have to do a Christianity check. That's just all there is to it, because I'm going to get in front of you and I'm going to slam on the brakes, and you better be ready. Ready? Right? Got it? So
Yeah, don't do
so
that
there
in
you
the
go.
street, but
It's a metaphor, guys. Yeah, it's a metaphor. What's a metaphor anyway? I don't even know the rest of that joke. I'm not a joke teller. I did hear a joke that I told in church Sunday. Did you hear it? Why do you have to be quiet in church? Because people are sleeping.
yeah, I remember.
Okay, there was a reason for that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
so anyway, that pretty much does us in, and
When you fall asleep in church, sometimes you can hide it, but when you snore,
there's no hiding it.
there's no hiding it.
And hey, okay, so I got to say this right now because I don't want to get anyone upset. When I sit in a pew and it's nice and warm, I'm going to fall asleep. I mean, I have a hard time staying awake, so it's a good thing that I preach. Keeps me awake. So I get that and I understand that. But sometimes there are just people that, you know, it's not that they're sick. It's not that they're, you know, having problems in their life. It's just simply they just do it. Not very many, but some do.
Yeah, but I mean, I know.
People are just people.
Yeah,
We still love them.
Yeah, if you stay up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday evening, and then you come in and you sleep in church, there's something wrong.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Possibly. I don't know. I should have never said anything.
yeah, I'm not going to say anything about if somebody falls asleep.
Yeah.
That's between them and the Lord. But
I apologize.
There are some times that I can tell that, and because I know my brethren, I can just tell that they were partying too much the previous night. They stayed up. You know how many people miss assembling with their brethren because they choose to be with people in the world on Saturday night? Hey, it's common. Don't think it's not. Alrighty.
You can't hide it when you're snoring, though.
Rick, hey, I get that one. I get that one with Steve. Man, oh man, I envy Steve's vocal power. Oh my, I wish I had something like that.
Great. He's like William Bell. He's got that great radio voice.
Oh yeah, William. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. There you go.
I think we're done.
Yeah, we're done. So next week, this coming Sunday, watch my Facebook, and I'm going to try to upload these to YouTube because I can't go live on YouTube because you all haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet. I need 1,000 people so I can go live with a mobile device, and that puts me about 164 away, or 1,000. Wait a minute, 864, something like that. away. So go to Restoration Movement 2.0 and subscribe. Hit the like button here and everywhere, and share the videos. Please share the videos on your timeline with the world so that they can see these crazy guys saying that the Lord has already come. If you disagree with us, that's a perfect thing to do, because you might get someone to set us straight. So you could be helping us. So share this video. You don't have to agree with us to share it, but it certainly spurs some great debate and discussion and Bible study. So that's what we're all about. Outside of that, one last thing. Something big's coming up. I can't tell you what it is yet. I have to go through the movements and the motions and the things, but something's big is coming up before too long. So here in the Indianapolis area, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. I'm done. You got anything else to add?
No.
All right.
If I offended anybody tonight, I apologize, unless it pricked your heart. Then I did my job.
Don't you mean if you didn't offend anybody, you apologize?
Yeah, what did I say? Oh, no.
It took a second to soak in, didn't it? Yeah.
No, sometimes I'm pretty animated,
Yeah.
and I'm not feeling good, so I usually get animated. It's the only thing that keeps me from
Keeps you falling over.
falling out of the chair onto the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do this. Lots of stuff on the floor around.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm sick.
here we go. Again, I think we're going to call it quit this time. Please be back with us. Make plans to be here with us to Sunday for the update on the visit. And hopefully there'll be 2 updates on Sunday. And also next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be right back here doing this again. So we love each and every one of you. And good night to you, Roy. Don, thank you for all of the comments. And Rick Brown and Logan, great to see you, my friend. Hey, send me some questions and so forth. You guys are just awesome. Lovely, wonderful young couple there. Just really inspires me that there is still hope for this world when I look at Logan and his wife. Anyway, that's it. I'm done.
Wait a
I'm
minute.
gonna stop talking.
Yeah, one more thing. I forgot on that questionnaire when they talked about the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
They asked if they could see the divorce decree from the judge.
Oh,
yeah. You remember that? I showed you?
Yeah.
Because they wanted proof who was in fault of the divorce.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I remember that. Yeah. Terrible.
Let's see, what book, chapter, and verse do they get that from?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Oh, all righty, guys. So see you next week. And thank you all so much for watching. Please share this on a video. Subscribe to Restoration Movement 2.0 on YouTube. Thank you much. And Trent, take our way.
Just be with us next time and keep studying. It's our job to show ourselves approved by studying.
Amen. See you next week.
Maybe I should take my own warning, right? Study more and more and more.
It's just